Why do you think it's so hard for men to have and make new friends?
There has been this idea or this trend or this unspoken idea that like closeness is gay, especially with men. It's like, oh, you have a best friend, bro. Like after like 7th grade, it just kind of sounds kind of gay, you know? Most men have trouble building those relationships because what it takes to build a relationship is like vulnerability and showing the parts of you that aren't perfect and don't have it all together. Feeling like you can do stuff alone is like a marker of strength. And I think most men want to be thought of as strong, right? And to not be thought of as strong or as independent in some ways is like a mark against your manhood. And I think also men are just very busy. It's like, I ain't got time for this.
I think in the manosphere, there's this idea that you can't be platonic friends with a woman.
Yeah.
Why do you think people believe that?
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Kaizen
fuck?
Asiedu. Here today I have a special guest, my favorite person in the world, my best friend, Imari Tuakli himself, ladies and gentlemen. All right, sorry.
Well, on that note, welcome back to Conversation with Kaizen. As you can see, there's 2 of us today, but one of us is a little less black than the other.
Damn.
Today I have Imari Tuakli, my best friend, and also a hell of a person. Imari is a life coach and international speaker who has spoken in Germany. He's spoken at TEDx. He's spoken at Harvard. Spoken at Google, Yale.
Damn.
And he's just hyping himself up. And you should be too, because this is going to be a really exciting conversation with someone who I respect immensely. But it's actually going to be a bit of a different conversation because it's going to be more personal. So besides all these cool accolades and titles that Imari has, what he is to me is my best friend. And a brother, and someone who, in the time that I've known him, has been the single most impactful person in my life. Not just externally, but also in who I am. And I like who I am when I'm around Imari. So today, what we're going to be talking about is how to have awesome friendships. And to tee up why this is actually important, I want to read a recent set of troubling statistics about the state of male friendship in America. So, 30 years ago, a majority of men, 55%, reported having at least 6 close friends. Today, that number has been cut in half. Slightly more than 1 in 4, 27% of men, have 6 or more close friends today. 15% of men have no close friends at all. Like, let that sit for a second. No close friends at all.
You said 15%?
15%. A 5-fold increase since 1990. And why is this important? Well, the single biggest predictor of your psychological and physical health and well-being is simply the number of quality, close friendships that you have. By comparison, all the traditional factors that your doctor usually worries about on your behalf make only modest contributions. And that quote is from Robin Dunbar, who is a biological anthropologist. And the first quote with the stats is from the American Survey Center. So,
Man, hit him with MLA format, bibliography. Make sure these niggas know.
of course, man, you got to know that it's legit.
Am I allowed to say niggas on Conversation?
You can say
Kaizen?
niggas on Conversation.
Okay,
Okay, so the first time that's been said, but thank you for introducing that. So, Imari, let's start with this.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's so hard for men to have and make new friends?
That's a big question, man. I'm gonna put on my human Imari hat, not my coach hat. I'm gonna riff, if I may. Why do I think it's hard for men to have strong friends? I don't know. I think, just to be real, I think that we're making a lot of progress right now, but I do think that there has been this idea or this trend or this unspoken idea that like closeness is gay, especially with men. It's like, oh, you have a best friend, bro. Like after like 7th grade, it just kind of sounds kind of gay, you know? And I think for a lot of men, like, for a lot of men, feeling like you can do stuff alone is like a marker of strength. And I think most men want to be thought of as strong, right? And to not be thought of as strong or as independent, in some ways is like a mark against your manhood. And I think that's like the last thing that a lot of men want. Yeah. So I think that maybe most men are afraid to create friendships because of what it might suggest about their own strength. And I think that most men have trouble building those relationships because what it takes to build a relationship is like vulnerability and showing the parts of you that aren't perfect and don't have it all together. Um, yeah.
Yep.
And I think also men are just very busy. It's like, I ain't got time for this.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you don't have time to not have friends, according to that. And so basically, what I'm hearing you say is literally homophobia, and not in the derogatory way, like, oh, you're a homophobe, but literally a fear of being gay or being perceived as gay.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is wanting to be viewed as strong because you can do things alone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I agree. I think so. My friendship with you is the deepest friendship I've ever had.
Mm.
And I actually don't think I was ready for a friendship like this before because I was so insecure. I've had best friends, but still, even with those best friends, there was like a level at which I wasn't willing to be vulnerable or let them in
Mm-hmm.
because of fears of being perceived as gay.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like for a man, and I think especially for a black man,
I knew that's what was gonna come up.
it's literally like to be a pariah,
Yeah.
right? So there's a fear of being perceived as gay, which is like it's like a mortal sin for a man, and a black man even more so.
Yep.
And then there's also this weird like egoic pride of like I did it myself, which is quite stupid because there's nothing that you can do by yourself that you can't do with other people at a better level.
Better, yeah. Better.
and faster.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about how that's actually materialized in both of our lives.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, have you ever had male friendships as close as this?
Yeah, it was interesting when you said that. I was like, huh, is that true for me? I've had like, I mean, I can count them all in one hand, but I have had male friendships. I'm thinking specifically like in high school. At one point, one of my best friends was a male, but I'm like, there's no way that it was as deep, right? And as just honest. And I think that one, that was a reflection of the friendship, but I also think that was a reflection of like my own self growth at the time, right? Like how deep can you really get with somebody? Pause. If you're sorry,
this is exactly the problem.
Like how deep can you get with somebody if you don't actually have any like depth yourself?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, shout out to my homie Emil. I haven't talked to him in years, but I think that would be like the closest thing that I would say. But just to be honest, like 90% of my friendships that have crossed a threshold of being like intimate and, you know, connected have been female. And whether that's a result of like, you know, fear of getting close to women or just like a byproduct of sauce, I don't know.
Little column A, little column B. This is actually an interesting point, though, about the difference between male to female relationships that are just platonic and male to male relationships.
Yeah.
I don't know what your experience has been, but there's actually something where it feels safer to be vulnerable with a woman sometimes, at least for me, than it does to be vulnerable with a man.
Why do you think that is?
For me or in general?
For you specifically?
I think for me, vulnerability implies softness and showing parts of yourself that are often weak. And with men, I think there's often this like, I think it's like across the species, like the sense of that's my competition. That's my competition, and I can't show weakness to my competition.
Yeah.
Whereas with a woman, there's not the sense that she's your competition in any.
Yeah, you don't really think of her as like, oh, she's gonna take my spot.
Yeah, not really. So I think that's like at a very primitive level. It's like he's my man, he's my competition, and also it's a fear that even if he's not my competition, I'm afraid that he'll lose respect for me if he sees me weak or vulnerable. He thinks I can't be his ally. So. For you, why do you think it's been easier for you to be closer with women historically?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question because I think a lot of some of what I'm navigating recently is this like recognition of how much the desire to prove myself has been running my life. And I think that just intuitively for me, I don't feel as much of a I need to prove myself with women going on. I just think like, oh shit, hold on. we're not gonna have a whole episode. I'm not gonna quote Drake. There it is. There's a line. Shout out to the Nothing Was the Same album, but there's a line in one of Drake's songs, and he says like, "She told me take a deep breath. You too worried about being the best out." Something like that. I remember every time I hear that line, I'm like, yeah, baby, I know. Like these numbers, man. Like I gotta get these numbers, And I think for like, I think, I mean, just to be real, like a lot of times, like as a man, like the level of respect that you have for a guy is based on like what he's accomplished, right? Like even if we don't admit that consciously, a lot of times it's like you look at a guy differently if he's like, if he feels like he's popping, if he's got his shit together, right? If he's confident, versus like if you see a guy who's kind of like schlumpy, and it's like the way that you relate to him is different. And I think that is the case, for how we relate to women as much, but I think that they have like a wider spectrum before we start looking at them like, yo, get your shit together. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that should be pretty bad.
Yeah. If a woman's making, fucking like, 60K, 70K a year, yeah, maybe like 5 pounds overweight, you like, we'll be all right? A dude is like 1 pound overweight or like making 70K. Hey, nigga,
stuff your shit up.
Get your shit together, dog, And I don't think that's like a good thing. I don't think it's like a cute thing to say, but I do think it's like kind of just built into the fabric of, the world that we were raised in. So yeah.
So let's talk about our relationship specifically, just to ground this a little bit. How about you tell the story of how we met?
Yeah, I feel like it's often you telling the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I met Kaizen on a flyer. We were both listed on a flyer for a place that was hosting personal development workshops. And just immediately I just, saw a sea of white faces and I was like, all right, yep, here we go. Swipe. Been here before. And then I saw a black face and I was like, what? Arf? And man had like pause. He had like good smile. He looked like he was confident. I think you were talking about like purpose or confidence or some shit. And I was like, half of me could have been like, oh shit, competition. The other half was like, oh cool, we might have something in common, right?
Yeah.
So that I think that's like a cool insight for people is like you can look at somebody who might be in your field or might be at your level and you can be like, oh shit, this is somebody I need to beat, or you could look at it like, oh, this is somebody I need to collaborate with. And what's interesting is that the beginning of our friendship was just collaboration, right? So saw you on the flyer, and I don't know if I reached out after the flyer or after we actually saw each other at the place that was hosting the workshops.
So I DM'd you on Instagram. I checked out your profile. I was like, oh, this guy's a vibe. And I felt a similar sort of outlook on the world. And then we ran into each other at the same venue that the flyer was for a different event.
Yeah.
And then you said, hey, we should get lunch.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I ain't make no money off that first workshop.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I mean, like $30.
Yeah. Struggle. But at least we got a friendship out of it.
Yeah. It was pretty good.
Look at that. Shout out to, I don't want to give my shout out.
They were paying me enough for shout outs.
I was like, I didn't make no money. What are we doing? So yeah, and then so I guess you said like you reached out, and then we had like a lunch in Santa Monica. You know me, I'm like frugal as fuck. So I was like, damn, you don't want to come over? I'll make some food. So we went to go get some lunch. I think that's where I met Uzi. And I know we've told this story plenty of times, so I can share it. But I remember like being like, oh, this guy, like he takes himself very seriously. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know what I felt, but I was kind of like, I wasn't like disappointed, but I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I think I automatically put like a threshold on how deep the friendship could go. And I think that actually is a bigger reflection for like whole masculinity and friendship in general is like, I often find that part of the reason why I don't connect so much with men is like, as you know, like there's times where I get my shit together. I stay focused. I take things seriously, but I don't think it's in my nature to take myself seriously. And I just have like a very playful, I guess you would say more like feminine nature. And sometimes the reason I resist being friends with men is I'm like, it just feels like you have to be on all the time and you have to be like hard. And I'm like, it doesn't even feel like I can't do that. It just feels like that's just exhausting to me. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that I value about the impact you've had on me is that I'm much less serious now. I take myself much less seriously. And I found that it hasn't dampened my effectiveness. In fact, it's only enhanced it.
Yeah.
Especially now that I'm in a stage in my life where I'm collaborating with other people a lot more. In order to be collaborative, you can't take yourself so seriously all the time.
Yeah.
Because it puts other people on edge, and it doesn't allow other people to feel safe enough to really give their full gifts. And that's a dynamic that we've had to work on. Like me being too serious, too like logical, too strategic, and you being like, yo, let's like be more playful, be more inspired, be more creative. And we'll talk about the different changes that have come about as a result of this unique friendship. But just to continue the story, so we actually weren't originally tight. Like we had our lunch. There wasn't like some amazing connection or anything. Like, this is gonna be my
Wasn't
best
love
friend.
it. Love it
Yeah,
first sight.
I was just like, okay, cool. Let's just see where it goes.
Yeah.
And
What was your idea or feeling going into that? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
I think it was just like, oh, this guy seems cool, right? And I don't think I was that consciously aware of it, but at the time, I was feeling a lack of close friends. Like I was feeling lonely. Like I think I was one of these people who was like, yeah, I don't think I had 6 close friends. I don't even know if honestly now I have 6, like certainly not 6 friends as close as you are. So it's like, what does close actually mean?
Right.
But I was feeling like, especially because I had changed so much in my life so recently, that a lot of the people who I used to be close with, there was a big gap.
Yeah, of course.
So you were the first person that I met who I felt was not just similar to me, but in a similar stage of his life as well.
Yeah.
And after that lunch, so I had this desire to start a men's group, and I went to Peru, and then I came back, and I was like, yo, I just had an intuition. I was like, I should talk to Imari about this. And I remember I talked to you about the group, and you're like, that doesn't sound that fun. But it sounds like obviously you're interested enough to collaborate, but the way I was thinking of it was actually way too serious.
Yeah.
And like too similar to what other boring ass, let's talk about our fucking feelings all the time men's groups were.
Yeah.
And then you added some flair and you made it more playful.
Yeah.
You made it more interesting.
Right.
Then we held our first event together. That was Lineage 1. It was fucking amazing.
There was play.
It was playful. It was unique. It was dynamic. It was cool. And yeah, you want to pick up the story from there?
Yeah, I mean, I just have so many thoughts that even as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, just to zoom out for a second, obviously we work in the personal development industry and like we're adjacent to the spiritual community. And as we're talking, I'm like, yeah, the main thing that both of those communities are missing is play, right? It's just like everything is so serious. Everything is like transformative. Fucking, it's just like, and yet the times I feel closest to the enlightenment that I'm seeking is when I'm in play. So I'm like, why is that not a fundamental aspect of the thing? So yeah, that's a thought that comes to my mind. And another thought that comes to my mind is like, we're talking about this idea of collaboration, which was the nexus of our friendship. Nexus is not the right word. And I'm like, taking outside the female male aspect of it, just thinking about it like masculine energy, feminine energy, I'm like, collaboration is more of a feminine energy. Like it's like, it just is, right? It's the weaving together of different ideas. It doesn't feel masculine, feels more like, no, this is the idea, straightforward, like let's go accomplish it. But collaboration does feel more effeminate. So I think that if I'm going to collaborate with somebody, there has to be that kind of like softer energy. Otherwise, like it's not a collaboration. It's like me following their dream, which for the most part, most of the niggas' dreams suck. So
True.
Why would I follow it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think feminine energy is more about like connection and collaboration and relationships. So, and because most men aren't in touch with their feminine side, that makes collaboration, deep collaboration and relationships and connection more difficult as a result. And it's no coincidence that like I went through my feminine awakening or whatever you want to call it right before I met you. Right, like pretty much right before I met you, that's when I started to actually like view myself as someone who had feminine qualities, and that doesn't make me gay or any of these things that I was super afraid of. And I viewed it as like, oh, a way of enhancing my tool set. Yeah. And I think after Lineage 1, I think it's fair to say that that's when we both like were like, oh, this dude's like, I can trust this person and build stuff with this guy. But it still wasn't like, oh, this is my friend. Yeah. It was more of like, oh, I see you and I respect you, and you're different from other people, not just someone I like. Yeah. That's when the respect piece. But to make it corny, the love piece came after when we had we went on a hike.
Yeah, I was about to say that if you look at like fundamental moments, it was
Yeah.
like it was the flyer, then it was like then it was like Lineage 1, and then it was drugs.
Yeah, and then we went on a hike. We did shrooms. One of my friends came along with us for the first part of the hike.
Oh yeah.
And he said, is like, you guys are gonna create a lot of safety for one another. It was one of those, just like, he just saw something super clearly and
Shout
just
out
like,
to him, bro.
yeah, he's great. Straz,
yeah.
he's awesome.
Deserves more of a shout out than the
He actually got Aaron Straz.
Yeah.
You gotta shout out Aaron.
than the first organization.
Yeah. And that was when we really connected.
Yeah.
Like, that's when we got into some deeper stuff. That's when I think you started to have the idea of like, oh, what if we actually like live together too? Because I think we were both at this point in our lives where we were like, I'm just tired of doing life alone.
Can't do this shit by myself anymore.
Yeah, and it's just not fun.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel as effective. And then that's when we like really cemented the friendship, and it turned out that we had a shared vision for like where we wanted our lives to go, and not just in terms of the impact that we want to have, but how we actually wanted to accomplish the thing, which is multiplayer, not single player.
Yeah. I think that there's like, you know, just to be honest, I think that we are like very lucky, like extremely lucky. It's not, you know, at first it was like, oh, they're both black guys in personal development. It's like, doesn't really guarantee a connection, but it's enough to make you like stop and like look, because it's such like a rarity, right? But then there's a level of like, okay, they also have they both distinctly have very high levels of ambition, right? Which I think already eradicates like just like a lot of the people that I know on, not even on the West Side, but just like in general. Like I don't meet many people who have as much ambition as I do. And then there's this level of like commitment to making it happen, right? And then there's also the level of like, we were also in similar places in our life. And then there's also the element of us both being like, oh, I'm having the realization that I don't want to do my life alone. And then there was a added element of like us both having the desire for the aesthetic of where we live. I'm not going to put it on podcast because I know you got stalkers, but like both of us were like, oh, we want to live in this specific area. So there was like multiple key things that like crossed the Venn diagram that were like, oh, this is actually perfect. And I think it's like I think the odds of finding this good of a match is like about the odds of a shooting star. I know it sounds very romantic, but like, to be honest, that's how I feel.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of these relationships that makes me not gag when I hear people say soul family.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is what people
that
are
makes
talking
sense.
about.
Yeah.
But although it is rare for sure, and I think no matter what, it's rare, it doesn't feel like an accident either. Because if you look at what you said, we knew the level of ambition that we had. We knew what our goals were. We knew how we wanted to live. We knew where we wanted to live. We knew what we wanted to do with our lives. What's common to all of that is we knew what we wanted.
Fair.
Right? So
that's fair.
Right? Like, so once we knew what we wanted, so when it presented itself to us, we knew to follow through.
Right. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Because the podcast is not just like, look at their awesome friendship, but like, how can you get the same thing?
Right.
And it starts with actually really knowing what you want.
Right.
And that takes a lot of work, actually.
Right.
Like, it's something where you got to sit down and you actually got to write and you got to reflect and you got to heal yourself, and you got to get real clarity on who you are and what kind of people are most compatible with that too.
Which inversely also means being willing to say no to things that are not a good fit, right?
Exactly.
Because I think a lot of people end up in friendships, they're like, oh, we both like the same kind of wine. It's like, okay, well, he's also like a serial killer, but fine.
What rosé? You're not ready.
Yeah, it's like, and then just like having the very generic basic things that they have in common. It's like, we love hiking. It's like, Jesus, sweetheart. Like, everybody likes hiking, right? And so, and again, I think that there is this unfortunate necessity of being willing to say no to things, even if you are lonely, right? I think that if you are lonely, it's very easy to just be, oh yeah, same kind of wine, like, here, let's room together. It's like, it just isn't going to set you up for long-term success. And I remember like at the beginning, even though I was desiring connection in my life, I did say no to you at the beginning, because I was like, oh, like play, for example, is not something I'm willing to compromise on. Even if somebody's coming to me with like a potentially money-making opportunity, I was like, I know my priorities are. So I think that it's important for the people listening to be like, what are unique qualities that I would want my friends to embody that are non-negotiable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I didn't know that I wanted play.
Mm.
That's not something I realized consciously, but I unconsciously was like, oh, that's part of what I like about you. But honestly, it was triggering at the beginning. It was honestly triggering. And we should talk about like things we found triggering about each other, because that's part of forming a powerful relationship, is being able to deal with those triggers and like actually get something constructive out of them. Like I was like, oh, this guy's like fucking joking all the time. He's like kind of effeminate sometimes. Like, what the fuck is this? But there's a part of
Why
me.
is he making so many dick jokes?
Yeah, well, that too. And he's like, and he said nigga. And I was like, I do like that. and because I had introspected enough, I didn't just dismiss it as, oh, this is bad.
Yeah.
I was more like, oh, okay, it's interesting what this is bringing up in me, because maybe this is actually something that I want to be more like, but I'm rejecting because it's uncomfortable for me, right? And it's important to distinguish between, oh, this is just not a good fit, which is what you were saying about my seriousness at the time, versus, oh, that's actually a reflection of what I want. It's just confronting to see it.
Yeah. So there's a level of being willing to inquire that has to be available to you, right?
Yeah.
So there is like this element of like self-knowledge to say like, yes, I know what my values are. I know what kind of attributes that I want. And also a level of self-inquiry to be like, okay, well, like what parts of myself have I not been exposed to enough, but I do want to bring about? Because I remember like, yeah, sure, there was a part of me at the beginning was like, this man takes himself so seriously, right? But I specifically remember, it's like my earliest memory of you of like, we were on a Zoom call and we were talking about like doing a men's group together. And I don't know, I said something like, well, I can't do it like this. I got to do it like this. And you're like, all right, well, let me check in how I feel about it. And you like close your eyes and you like just like sat there for like a minute, like doing, I don't know, some sort of spiritual retrieval, like how you felt about the thing.
Let me talk to my guy.
Yeah, you're like, let me talk to my guys. And I, like, part of me was like, oh, come on, like, you don't you just know the fucking answer, right? But there was this part of me of like admiring like because there's not many conversations you have with somebody where they're like, let me check in with myself, and then they just pause for a minute and just like close their eyes. Like most people would feel like that's like socially uncouth, and I like there was a part of me that was triggered and annoyed by it, and there's also this part of me that's like admiring like the like boldness of it, or like the I am going to do what I need, right? And I think that for me at that time I was just very much feeling like so much of what I do and how I move is like dictated by like how people are going to perceive it and if they're going to like it or whatever. So to just watch somebody do some shit that's just like socially like weird and like be okay with it, I'm like, damn, I do respect that. So yeah.
And it's cool. I never actually, I don't even remember that moment that you're talking about.
It happened multiple times.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, I was like, I got it. I just need. Sorry, I'll be back in a minute. I gotta figure out what I think.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm like, I'm paying for Zoom Basic.
45-minute trial. The notifications popping up.
I'm like, hey, we're gonna use your Zoom next time.
Oh, that's good. So I think what would be fun to talk about is what are the ways in which you've changed that you think are attributable to me, and what are the ways that I've changed that I think are attributable to you. So I'm happy to start here. So I've already mentioned less serious and just less rigid and stiff. Like I think even though I had gone through like my feminine awakening, I hadn't really integrated that into my life. I still very much had this image of myself as like, I need to be the man. Like I need to be strong. I need to be powerful. I need to be confident. And it's like, it was ironic because all those things are still here, but I don't need to like show them. It's like, if you are that, then you don't need to play the part when you are the character. So that's one of the big things that's changed. And it's helped me just be more relaxed in my life in general. I'm a lot more comfortable with who I am and a lot more comfortable being playful. And I don't view playfulness as a distraction. I view it as part of my efficacy.
Part of the process.
Yeah, and I've seen the impact that it has on business. I've seen the impact that it has on my social life. Like pretty much every part of my life has gotten better because of this thing that you've impacted in me. I think I'm a lot more emotionally intelligent because of Imari as well. That's one of the things I associate with you. I think I've always been sensitive, but it used to be all anxiety. So it was functionally I was insensitive, right? So you are very sensitive, but you're very clear on like what's yours, what someone else's, how people are feeling, how you're feeling, how they may be interacting.
Mm-hmm.
So I've become more emotionally intelligent just by being around Imari. And
Mm-hmm.
as someone who I've always been reinforced and identified with my logical intelligence, not only did I see my emotional intelligence go up, I understood the value of it and how much easier it can make life if you're sensitive and you know how to actually use that data that you're taking in through your sensitivity to make higher quality decisions and just be more pleasant to be around. So that's another thing. I think I'm just more pleasant to be around because of my association with Imari.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And um, when you think about like how to build an awesome relationship, it's inherently humbling, right? Because all of those things are things that if I told the past version of me I need to work on, I would have had resistance. Like, what the fuck? Fuck off. I have to be more emotionally intelligent, or fuck off. I need to be more playful. And even still, it's still like, God, like, all right, you're right, but it's like uncomfortable. And I don't think men like to hear that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it's not even that you told me that. It's just I would observe the difference in the quality of some of your relationships versus mine, or how people were receiving you, how versus how they were receiving me, or how it felt how you would treat me versus how I would treat you. Right. And that awareness to be able to see, oh, okay, I'm seeing through someone's embodiment how this is a better path. That's something that you can't pick up in a fucking book. You can't go to a personal development workshop. Like, you actually need to be around someone to see them represent qualities that you want to, that would be helpful and useful for you.
And the effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't want that to go understated, is the idea of like, it wasn't me being like, hey bro, like do this. No, yeah, it wasn't that at all. And I think that's a suggestion to the quality of your willingness to update your software, but also like the awareness, right? Like some people are just fucking completely unaware of like how other ways of being might be more effective, right? And as a result, then what's the point, right? So you can be around all the, you can, it's like being the fucking broke friend around all your rich friends. It's like, and having no awareness of like
They're just lucky.
Yeah,
They're all
it's
lucky.
like, I don't know, man. Maybe just statistically, you should just take some feedback. Yeah, cool. So the question is how I've learned and what I've changed in respect to our relationship. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's the main thing that comes to my mind, like the biggest thing is like, I feel like it's quite important for where I'm at and where I've been and where I'm going, is like ownership of qualities that I have felt shame for. So I think that and we've mentioned them on the podcast, there's like certain key qualities that overlap in between us, which I don't find honestly much. Just for example, it's like ambition, right? And there have been times, more times than not, where I'm like ashamed of being an ambitious person, right? And I'm like, is this weird? Is this coming from trauma? It's like da 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 da. And I would say, yeah, you're the most aligned ambitious person that I've ever met, right? And I know that you have big desires, big vision, and big capacity for what you can create. And to see you own that, I feel like you just do it shamelessly. And I think it's kind of akin to the whole like, let me tap into my ancestors for a second. It's just like this bold ownership of who you are. And I think that for me, again, because I think my Achilles heel has been like how I am perceived by others, seeing certain qualities of like, I'm going to check in with myself. I'm going to be an ambitious person and not have second guessing and being in your head about it and whatever is the quality that I most seek to learn and to embody. And it's not from like a carelessness aspect. It's not like I don't give a fuck how this affects other people. It's just like a clarity of like knowing what you need, and a unembarrassed ownership of it. I think that's what I am most looking to embody. I think the way that you own your ambition, own your desires, whether it comes to like women or work or whatever, and not letting how other people will perceive it deter it or make you ashamed to even admit it, I think is very important and impactful.
Cool. Good to hear that.
Yeah.
So for additional context, Imari and I, we run a business together. So we run a set of retreats together.
Feels like we run multiple businesses
Yeah.
together. But...
we have a talk show together
Yeah.
for the culture,
Yeah.
which is a business for us too,
Mhm.
in its own way.
Mhm.
We also live together.
Mhm.
And that's unusual as well, because I think more and more the world is moving toward this more like atomic way of being, where everyone's doing things by themselves or online, which is kind of this like simulacrum of connection and community, but it's not really the same thing. It's actually being around real humans.
Mhm.
And so I'm 33, Amari's 31. When's the last time you lived with someone before this?
2019.
Okay, so a good 5 years.
Yeah.
And for me, the last time I lived with someone, damn, dude, like 2010. Yeah, long time.
Jesus.
Yeah, long
Christ.
time. Outside of like like girlfriends and stuff like that, like the last time that I ever chose to live with someone and actually viewed that as a good thing was when I had to in college. So it might seem odd, like why if you could live alone, why would you choose to live with someone? And I think it's actually useful to talk about that, because even that is unique. Like, there are people who have best friends, but not everyone chooses to live with their best friend. And I have actually some developed thoughts on how I just think it's straight up better in so many ways. It requires management and work and alignment, obviously, but like, holy shit, it's life-changing if you do it properly.
Yeah, so, I think our lives would be completely different even if we had the same friendship, but we just didn't live in the same house. Like, just fundamentally, it would just be completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to like recollect. Shout out to mushrooms, man. I feel like every time I'm on a podcast, somehow I end up talking about mushrooms. I'm like, not what I'm trying to be known for, but I'm just like, this shit has changed my life. Yeah, I mean, I remember the moment when I was like, I think I was like about to say it, and then I think I like held back, and then you were like, "Oh, what were you about to say?" And I was like, I know, I just had this idea of us living together." And I think that without mushrooms, I don't think I would have said it, because I think that at that time, I was like, I'm not trying to give up my fucking autonomy. I'm not trying to give up my independence. Like, I want to blast music whenever I want to blast music. I don't want to say like thriving in my aloneness, but I was like luxuriating in it, and I was like, I get to do what I want whenever I want. And I just didn't think it was possible that a living with somebody would be better than living alone. And yeah, it was very wrong, but I think you don't know until you're in that new experience. And I just don't think I would have had the courage to have even suggested that we live together if I had not been on a psychedelic substance.
so shout out to psilocybin.
Shout out to psilocybin, baby.
Yeah. Do you think it's actually better to live with other people besides like your like spouse or something like that? Like, if you were to re-architect how humans live, do you think it would be better, not necessarily for everyone to live together, but for more people to live together, to actively seek that out?
I mean, it's like pretty tough for me to say, because I know that the vantage point that I'd be speaking from is like a very unique situation. Like, again, I cannot reemphasize how lucky and one of a kind I think our dynamic is. I remember like the first like month or two we were living together, like people would come over and they'd be like, "Oh, how's it been?" And we both been like, "Oh, it's actually like, it's chilling."
Yeah,
like we're good. Yeah, we're good. I honestly, call me a cynic, but I don't think most people would have that kind of scenario. So I think I speak from a privileged position if I were to say, yeah, everybody should just, go live with each other. I think most people is like, no, don't go live with them. Just because y'all like rosé wine. It's like, not gonna be a good fit. I've seen plenty of roommates that I'm like, yo, this is actively hurting your life.
Yeah.
I think it's like a romantic relationship. It's like that shit can be actively bringing you down. And the fact that you're now enmeshed in the same house means it's like harder for you to not allow it to affect you like that. The last time I was living with somebody, I was living with, there was two people in the house, and one of them, just to be honest, was the exact opposite of you. Homie was just 13 hours a day on the couch, and that's not an exaggeration. And it was just like episode after episode of cartoons and just like weed, and it affected me like physically. Like I remember the times I'd be like, bro, I was hustling back then. I was having meetings, going out, doing things, fucking like I was making life happen. I feel like that's when my kind of career really started moving as far as a coach. And then I would like walk in the house, and you just like, when somebody hasn't moved in a while, has that smell. It's like it smells like a museum in here. Like shout out to him, but like it was real, and I remember like as soon as I walked in, I felt this kind of like thing in me that was like, I don't like. It made me more self-conscious of my ambition, and it made me feel like it's not okay, because I'd see him doing his thing. I'm like, oh, like, am I taking myself too seriously? Should I just be on the couch fucking 13 hours a day? Like, he hasn't died yet, so like that looks easier than what I'm doing, and so it like made the potentially positive qualities that I had like shameful, and then I felt uncomfortable bringing it up because I didn't want to, I didn't want him to feel judged. I didn't want him to feel whatever. But it got to the point where it was affecting me, and I was like, yo, come on, like this ain't cool. So yeah, to say everybody should live with somebody, it's like that's like saying everybody should be in a relationship. It's like don't get desperate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can break down when it is actually appropriate then.
Mhm.
Because I think of it just like a romantic relationship. The worst way to live is with a romantic partner in a toxic relationship. That's like worse than living alone.
Worse than by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So above that is being by yourself and being unhappy. It's better to be by yourself unhappy than with another person unhappy.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it just amplifies whatever you're experiencing. Then above that, I think is alone and happy. And then I think is with other person or people, maybe even in community where you're all happy and productive and creative. So I think I agree with you. I don't think most people should seek to live. Well, okay. I'll give you the conditions where I think it makes sense.
It's like living with somebody is a multiplier of whatever you're already experiencing.
Exactly. And I think just to like acknowledge who we are and what we do, like we've both worked on ourselves a lot. Yeah. So we're very self-responsible and self-sovereign, and like we know how to take care of ourselves and provide for our own happiness. Yeah. Like even, yesterday, if I can share just a little bit, like you were going through a hard time. I came back after a day out. I
was like hanging from a noose. I'm sorry.
I had to pull him down. I was like, hold on, nigga. Jesus, so after I got him down from the noose, yeah, I just saw him journaling, and I was like, oh, how are you? He's like, not doing well. But it's like, he wasn't like sitting there, like, staring at a screen to fix his problems. He was sitting there working on it. Yeah. Right. So you're responsible for your own happiness. I'm responsible for my own happiness. And then we amplify each other's projects. Right. We help each other process emotions so much fucking faster. Yeah. Like, holy shit. It's crazy how fast you can get through problems when there's someone else around, especially someone who loves you, is a good listener, and has enough awareness to help you see blind spots. Yeah. So if you're with someone who, the first thing is like, you need to be responsible for yourself. Like, you need to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And then you need to be around someone else who is also in the business of taking care of themselves. Mm-hmm. And then you need to have really good communication. Now, this sounds like a really trite thing, but to give an example of how we operate, we actually have meetings. It used to be every single week where we clear anything that needs to be cleared. So any like negative things, anything that's bothering us, anything that we want to give each other feedback on, we set aside time. It's literally in our Google Calendar to do that. The second thing that we do is we acknowledge things that we think the other person's doing well, being well, things that we like about each other. The third thing that we do is we celebrate small wins.
Both of us getting laid,
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
That matters for a man,
Yeah,
it's like, that's a big part of life.
Yeah, we got trophies and everything.
Yeah. It's like right there. So like when we think about like relationships are work, I mean, I think work usually has a negative connotation. It's just like we're processing. We're just processing, just like we have to take time to process for ourselves. We have to take time to process our relationships.
Yeah, it's like maintenance.
Yeah, it's maintenance work. And I can say that the last 6 months of me living with Imari have been probably the most rapid acceleration of growth for me in my life because of just having someone else around
Mhm.
who I can process stuff with
Mm.
and do it in real time, do it quickly. Because when you're by yourself and you're dealing with shit, like if you're like, imagine someone who's not journaling regularly, not meditating, not doing breath work, not reading, none of this shit. Like, your issues just stay there forever.
Yeah,
They don't go
I don't
away.
want to talk to that nigga.
Yeah, it's like holy shit. It's like it's
Yeah.
actually miserable now that I think of it
Yeah.
by comparison.
Yeah.
And I remember before, like when I would have to like deal with my own shit, I would deal with it, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah, because it's like you're also contending with the voice that probably created the problem in the first place.
Exactly.
So it's like, is that the voice of healing or is that the voice that is creating the problem?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And literally just saying some of this shit out loud is like, okay,
Yeah, it's
that's
nonsense.
not silly. Yeah, all right, moving on with this trauma.
Yeah. 100%. You don't, I mean, to quote Jordan Peterson, you don't really know what you think until you speak it out loud, right? And then when you speak it out loud, then you're like, okay, that's a stupid idea.
Yeah. So you can dispense with that.
Yeah. And for the most part, like, unless you're on drugs, you're not really talking to yourself out loud. So it serves to have a sounding board or something to reflect off of, right? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. At the beginning, I mentioned that stat about like 55% of men don't have 6 close friends or more. And it's noteworthy that that has gotten worse over time. So it's like compared to 30 years ago, that's significantly worse. So why do you think it's getting worse? Because we talked about why it's can be difficult for men to have intimate male relationships, but why is it getting worse over time in your view?
Because I think it's just easy for us to have like symbols of connection that aren't real connection. Like social media is obvious examples. Like, oh, I don't need to go out and I just send this funny meme to the homie, and it's like, yeah, but it's like it's like not the same. You know, there's kind of like that old trope of like the dad has his man cave and they all watch the game and they all come through and drink their beers, and it's like, don't bother Roger when his friends are over and they have their time. It's like, yeah, like spent time together is like important. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if like even outside of men and women, like that graph is going down for everybody as a result of social media.
Yeah. And to be clear, it's going down for women, but it's much worse for men.
Yeah, much worse for men. I think if men have places to hide / excuses, then they will use them much more to the extent. Also, porn's getting better. So it's like, why'd I gotta go outside? You know what I'm saying?
Got the Oculus VR. You're just like, I'm here. This is almost real.
He's like, you want me to spend gas money? So yeah, I think that like, you know, there's the element of like, we have already been wired to not necessarily seek companionship, and then we built a society in which it's even easier to not have to have it. So I think that makes sense why over time it goes down. But I mean, like, you know, as we were speaking about last night, as I was hanging from the noose or whatever, it's like my life isn't perfect right now. It's not like I'm happy, joy, and everything is fucking great all the fucking time. But I was like thinking this morning before this conversation, I was like, however, quote unquote, not great my life is, I'm like imagining a life without Kaizen and this friendship. I'm like, I don't care where that is. It's worse. Like whatever other parallel universe that does not include this one variable is worse. And it doesn't matter if I'm like, oh, well, I'm alone, but I have an extra $4 million in the bank. It's like, yeah, the value that's been provided over the course of the last year is like, is better than that. Yeah. I think relationships make life worth living.
I agree.
Yeah. As to like rich niggas, you know, who experience what, you know, a great bank account look like. It's like,
Not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually worth noting we've only known each other for like a year and a half.
That don't make sense.
Which is crazy to think about.
It almost feels like you shouldn't even say it because it's like it doesn't even make sense.
It disqualifies what we're saying or something. But that's the thing that's crazy about it. And I think this is one of the big realizations I've had about relationships in general because of the potency and depth of this relationship is great relationships don't necessarily take time. They take intentionality. Because I've known people for much longer who I've never gotten as close with. And we've not only gotten close, but we also created things together, which I think has only amplified the depth because, I mean, we've done, 3 retreats together.
talk show.
We live in this house together. We do events every month, like just for our social lives. We do events all the time. So going back to what you said about moving from a competitive paradigm to a collaborative paradigm, when you're collaborating with someone consistently, it actually builds the bonds even deeper because
potentially I've had some of my closest friendships die once they entered the arena of collaboration.
Yeah, fair enough. So why do you think those died while this has thrived?
That is a question that's like $1 million question, right? Because then it's like, how do you replicate something of this quality? I do think that part of it is I just don't think that the ambition thing can be undersaid. It's like collaborating with somebody who just can't see the scope or isn't willing to invest in the scope of a vision is like, it's just going to constantly be a push and a pull, and it's just going to create more and more friction.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, all love to them, and rest in peace to the friendships that died that I had that entered a space of collaboration and then just couldn't sustain that. So I think it takes a different and special and unique kind of friendship to also sustain collaboration. Like you always hear about the like startup founders who started it as friends, and then like when money came in, then it was a big fight. Right? Yeah. So.
And I think part of that is being able to check one's own ego in service of a higher goal.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think you've consistently done really well, and you've influenced me to do more. But I think you were ahead of me there because with Imari, one of the remarkable things about Imari is he's competitive with life, but not other people, unless it's like soccer or it's a game that's supposed to be competitive.
Yeah.
So I remember I almost had suspicion when we started getting closer, and you told me like I don't feel any competitiveness with you. And I was like.
And this uber competitive nigga was like,
is this a tactic?
He's in my head.
Yeah. And I had never been someone who considered myself competitive, but I noticed feelings of competition or jealousy or comparison come up. So I think I was projecting so hard. It was hard for me to actually believe that you really don't view as competitive. And
that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny. And I was like, really? Oh, is this nigga trying to get me?
It's a tactic.
Yeah, but when I saw how good it felt, frankly, to not be in competition, and how much more effective it was, and how much more we could build, and how much more quickly, I was like, oh well, yeah, I just should start living that way too. Yeah, and I think that's one of the hardest things for men because I think life for men is in general competitive. Like it's competitive for mates, it's competitive for resources. Like I'm not gonna bypass that, but if we think about like tribal society, men had alliances. Yeah. Right. You had other men in the tribe who you were not competitive with, who you were co-invested in making something of yourselves with, and protecting the tribe and gathering resources for the community. So if you just have the competitiveness with the world, but you don't have the collaboration with anyone else, it's fucked.
You're fucked. Yeah. And it's like, I think it's, as far as I can recall in my life, I feel like that's been a pretty natural part of me, is like I don't want to say lack of competition. Like with soccer, I'm like, let's fucking go. Like I'll pull up on a nigga, you know what I mean? But like this idea of like, I have to get more views or be better or whatever than somebody else. It like, for me as somebody who just knows that connection is where I get the majority of my satisfaction. It's like, well, if I win and you lose, then I'm alone. It's like, cool. Now I'm at the top of the mountain by myself. And it's like, I've been there, and it's like, it sucks, you know? So I already know that like winning is not my ultimate goal. Like winning and looking around and being like, yo, we all fucking popping is like the ultimate goal for me. Yeah.
So we talked a lot about male to male relationships, but funnily enough, and I think it's another one of the areas where we're eerily similar, is your closest friend when I met you was a woman, Toya.
Yeah. Right? Shout out to Toya.
Shout out to Toya.
We love Toya.
Yeah. And my closest friend was also a woman, Melanie. And I think in the manosphere, there's this idea that you can't be platonic friends with a woman. Yeah. Why do you think people believe that?
Because they just see men as brutish creatures who can't control their impulses.
Fuck everything!
Which is like not completely wrong.
It's nuanced, so break down the nuance for me.
There's nuance. Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, the first thought I have with any new female friend that's in my life is like, would I fuck? Like, that's the first question. It's like not a conscious thing. It's like I don't hit a fucking spreadsheet. It's just like my brain is like just associate, like sorting, like where is this person gonna fit in my life. And I think that I have been known to play the game of like, oh, we can do both. like, you can be my best friend, and like also like, why not? You know what I mean? But I have found that, like, you know, speaking of Toya specifically, is like, I don't know. It's like I have no doubt of the like depth of care that this person has for me, right? And their ability to understand me, right? I think a lot of times, like, whether they don't take the time to, or they just don't have the capacity to, I've found that like most male friendships like don't feel like they have the empathy to actually make you feel understood, right? Versus a woman would be like, you know, they're built for that. They're built for empathy. So it's like, cool. They will take the time to understand what the issue is and how you're feeling, and like not necessarily, you know, they can get around to providing a solution, which I think Toya does. But like, first and foremost, I'm like, I feel like if I have a problem, Toya gets it. Yeah.
I think there's kind of two ends of the spectrum, right?
Mhm.
Because there's men who are able to have platonic relationships with their female friends, and it doesn't mean that they don't have a sexual attraction. It just means that it's subsumed under higher order desires.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I would rather have a friend, this person be a friend, rather than complicate this.
Yeah.
Or sometimes there's just like hard boundaries in the way, like one of you is in a relationship, it's just not going to happen. Then there's like the middle tier of guys who believe it's just not possible. Then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is guys who are completely bypassing and actually do want to fuck their friends, but they're too insecure, they're not confident, and they bypass and they act like they don't, while they're subtly trying to do it. Like this nice guy behavior. We've mutually seen this in the spiritual community. These guys who act like they're like eunuchs when they're not. Yeah, it's like, come on, bro. And they're playing their own game. It's just a shitty game. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it's not possible, but I think ironically it requires, just like you said, acknowledging that yes, that's a female. Since Adam met Eve, or monkey A met monkey B, males have wanted to have sex with females. And by the way, females, there's a part of them that's evaluating you in that frame immediately too. Yeah, it's a human thing. Yeah, but then there's like the higher consciousness part of you, prefrontal cortex part of you, who's like, okay, but what else do I want with this person? Yeah. And do I want to mix one with the other? It doesn't even make sense. So it's totally possible. I will say that for me, it's been more of a development to that point. Like, I don't think my friendship with Melanie would have been possible with a version of me 10 years ago, for example. Like, I think I've grown into someone who's more mature and able to value the things that a woman can even bring to a platonic relationship in a deeper way. So I don't think like out of the box, many guys can do it. Like, you kind of have to develop yourself. But it's certainly fucking possible. Yeah. And especially if like you're getting your needs met elsewhere, then it's like, exactly. Yeah. It's like if you haven't had sex in like 10 years and you finally have a female friend, it's like empathy. I don't give a fuck about no empathy. I mean, like, another thing that comes up for me that I think, again, the myriad of things that coalesced into the cosmos to allow us to have this one of a kind friendship. I think we're also very lucky that we just don't have the same taste in women. Like, true. Yeah, we've actually never had. Actually, this was one girl I want to talk about. Who? Give me a clue. They don't know. There's a pair of them. That we were gonna bring to. Yeah. You know, thing. I'm not like interested, but I'm like, oh, I'd be down for like a threesome. Oh, yeah. Not like I want to date her. Yeah, no, I'll share. You know me. I'm like, I'm very. I know. Everybody can win. Yeah. So, but even that is like, we can talk about this, and it's no big fucking deal. I think a lot of guys, they actually can't talk about that. Or they get competitive, or they get possessive, and it's like, you know, we've had discussions like, okay, if we're both interested in a girl, like, then it's also like, okay, well, rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, you know, we just kill each other. It's back to caveman meets a rock and hammer. But yeah, like, then it's just like, it's a conversation. Yeah. its ability to have a conversation.
Conversation, not a competition.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But I think just in general, we're lucky that, like,
that helps.
yeah, you're into redheads. I'm like Moroccans.
Yeah. I mean, I don't dislike Moroccans, but
yeah, but like,
but you don't dislike redheads.
yeah, I don't
That's
dislike
the
redheads.
difference.
I'm just like, every time Moroccan, I'm like,
yeah. It's not really redheads. It's like
yeah,
I think that's a phase.
really?
Yeah. It used to definitely not be redheads.
Sorry, redheads.
Yeah, it's a phase. I mean, the phase is still here. To be clear,
We're still in the process.
yeah. Well, the phase is not over, but I think it's more of a phase, or maybe it's a development of case. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, we both do men's work, and we do it together. So we lead retreats, transformational experiences for men.
Yep.
And our experiences are very different from what I see out there with a lot of men's events. So how would you describe what we're trying to accomplish that's different?
Yeah. I want to say create the most embodied experience of transformation for men possible. But the reason I kind of hesitate or want to add an asterisk to that is because I know that in this sphere, when you use the word embodied, it's more just like, and masculine and like lift rock, right? But I don't mean embodied as far as like just like brute force physical activity. When I mean embodied, I mean like immersive, full on, taking it from concept to I feel it in my bones. I can smell it in the room. Literally, I hear it through the music that's playing. The experiences are like, I come from a film background. So like when I design an experience of transformation, I'm designing it like a film scene, right? It's like, cool, what is the script? What are the characters that are being played? Like it's the idea of like, I went to MITT, which was a person development program a couple years ago, and it changed my life. And it was like a couple months of like in-depth learning about myself and the brain and how it works and all the things and traumas that have been, sequestering me from my potential. And that was great. And what really changed my life was when I thought I was going to die and was confronted with the, gangsters in Los Angeles. Feel free to find that video somewhere else on the internet. And it was like, oh, when I am actually presented with a life or death scenario in which everything is really embodied, and it's like, oh, I can feel my heart fucking pounding. Oh, I can feel the cost if I don't integrate this lesson of confidence or self-belief. Like, I can feel the cost of that. That's when I actually fucking was like, okay, I'm making a decision to change my fucking life, right? And because we are in the business of changing people's lives, I have personally experienced that, oh, full-on embodied immersive experiences is what actually triggers transformation. Otherwise, it's just hopeful concept that it lands and inspires a transformation. My intention is that when you walk into one of our events, it's like you don't leave the same. Otherwise, I don't feel like we've done our job fully.
Yeah. And I would add on to that, in addition to it being truly embodied, confronting, and that they're having to face death, they're having to face the temporality of their experience. It's fully immersive, it's cinematic. I would say it's fun.
Yeah. 100%.
Actually. Yeah. Like it doesn't, I don't think coming to our events feels like doing the work in a way that is frankly repellent to a lot of men. And a lot of other circles are subtly encouraging men to behave like you have to work on yourself, you have to fix something. Because, and when people think fun, I mean, we have done stuff that's like overtly fun, like freestyles, and you have to do improv stand-up comedy. But even the stuff that's not explicitly fun, there's a sense of adventure to what we do. There's a sense of larger than life, almost like you're in a game or you're in a movie, that makes it feel fun. It feels epic.
Yeah, larger than life experiences so that you can make your life larger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is part of what we try to do with our lives in general and with everything that we do. But since this podcast is about like male to male relationships and being a man and developing yourself as a man in a way, I think it's really important that it's not lost that being a man should be fun.
Yeah. And you are literally, every single person listening to this, were designed as a kid to learn through play, right? Why do kids wrestle? It's like, cool, I have to learn how to defend myself,
Yeah.
right? Why do kids want to run into the forest and explore things? That's how you fucking learn, right? Like, you learn through a spirit of play, and at some point it becomes, I learned through like jamming my head in the book and fucking holding everything away. It's like, that's how you force information, but that's not how you learn. Yeah.
Mari, thank you, bro.
You are
I
welcome.
don't know why I looked at the camera when I said thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Imari. Is there anything else you want to say?
This was fun.
Yeah.
Get it? Full circle. I am grateful for you. I think that there's something cosmically poetic that we are doing this like 6 months into the living together journey, in the studio that we literally built at the house. What's up, Uzi? Checking us out. Yeah, man. And despite the fact that I think it's unlikely, I hope that everybody finds a friendship like this, because I think finding friendships like this is one of the steps that you will have to finding the fullest version of who you are. And I think that without a friendship like this, I don't think the chances are very high that you will ever get to meet the biggest, deepest, happiest, fullest version of yourself. So it's more important than pretty much anything else you could be seeking to find right now.
I heard that.
And we got it. So now we ain't got no excuses, bro.
Love you, brother.
Love you.
All right. So thanks for watching another episode of Conversation with Kaizen. If you made it to the end of this, that means you're fucking with it on some level. So please leave a rating, ideally 5 stars, and share this podcast with someone who you think either needs this kind of relationship in their life, or someone who you would like to form that kind of relationship with too. Until next time, I'm Kaizen. This is Imari. Imari, where can people find you?
At Free Imari on all platforms.
Awesome. Go check him out. Have a great life. See you next week.